Hello students, here I'm going to be going through your 4.3 notes. And now a couple quick comments. First is, again, at any time you feel the need to pause this, please do so. And you can always try questions on your own or go back and review things again as you are watching this video. So just go ahead and get started here. And another thing actually I wanted to mention was, keep in mind that these notes are going to be really valuable for really setting up the rest of this unit. What we are learning here today with these congruent triangles and their corresponding parts is really going to be helpful in our understanding of the remaining sections. So let's dive on in. What does it mean to be congruent? Well, we know congruent really essentially means equal, but when we're comparing two objects like two triangles, we say that they have the same shape and size. So two triangles, again with all their corresponding parts being the same. So it means all their corresponding parts are the same. It means all their sides and angles are congruent. Now, we don't mean that every side is the same within one triangle. It just means that it matches another side and another. So like this idea of a congruency statement is really important. And one thing that I want to mention there is that order matters. So order is really going to matter here, again, in this section and in the remaining sections. Because as I said, notice here, it is not saying that all three of these sides are the same. No, it's just saying that AB has a matching side, so does BC, and so does AC. They all have a matching side, a corresponding side in the other triangle. Same thing with all the angles. So every side must match up to another side, every angle match up to another angle, to where if I were to rotate like triangle DEF there, I could place it right on top of ABC and it would look the exact same. So one of the things I want to point out here, as I said in terms of order matters, is I want you to read the order of these letters here. It's kind of like a number system I like to use. A is going to match up with D, B is going to match up with E, and C is going to match up with F. To where if you don't see these markings, but you have this congruency statement here, again, very important because you'll notice that all of the sides and angles match up here based on the order of the letters in that congruency statement. So you'll notice, take a look, angle A and angle D, they match. Even the sides work, right? Or even look at like AC. That's 1 to 3, and over here it matches D to F, 1 to 3. So that the idea behind those numbers and the letters matching up, again, is going to be helpful and important as we're going along here. A valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. Again, order matters. So what's this idea of CPCTC? It stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And again, I used symbols there, as you can see. It says if we know two triangles are congruent, then we know that every pair of corresponding parts is also congruent. Again, we're not saying each triangle is equilateral. We're just saying that everything in one matches something in the other. So to practice that, I want you to list all congruent angles and congruent sides given the congruency statement. So let me do one here, and then again, perhaps pause it here and try number 2, and then take a look and see what I get. So let's match up all the angles. And so again, I couldn't, you don't necessarily have to do this every time. I recommend it because it's especially helpful with the angles, because then I can just say, all right, angle J is congruent to angle P. I know that angle K is congruent to angle Q, and angle L is congruent to angle R. And again, just notice the notation there. Notice how we're saying it. Notice how I'm writing it. Those things matter. I'm not saying equal, I'm saying congruent. And I know congruent means equal when I go to like solve and stuff, but again, that's not what I'm saying here. So the sides, look at the first two letters. JL is congruent to PQ. Now this might be helpful more if you had a picture, and you'll kind of see that more in number 3 as well. But you need to list, think to yourself, what are the three sides of triangle JKL? That would be JK, KL, and JL. And so then if I match up the letters in the next triangle, KL matches with QR, JL with PR. Now when it says, right, another valid congruency statement really just means rearrange the letters. Like you could just go in reverse. LKJ is congruent to R, Q, P. As long as every letter matches up still based on its original order, you're fine. So again, you can try number 2 here. I'm just going to go over the answers here in just a second. So again, you can pause it, try it, and then look and see what I get. All right, so what you should have is you should have something along the angle W is congruent to angle E, angle X is congruent to angle F, and angle Y is congruent to angle G. One thing I want to point out, I know I said we typically use 3 letters to name an angle. Here it's just very clear when I use 1 letter what I'm talking about, so that's fine, although you've got to be careful. Sometimes we use 3 letters. And then with the sides, WX is congruent to EF, XY is congruent to FG, and WY is congruent to EG. Perhaps another order would be triangle XYW is congruent to triangle FGE. Perhaps you did triangle YXW, it's congruent to triangle GFE, which would also work. All right, now this is just, again, going back to, again, the same idea of order matters, match up parts, but always just be careful. I'm very specific here on the letters always matching up. I know KM is the same as MK. I know that, and so like on this first one, KM, and if you match up the letters, would be congruent to AC. Again, I don't want to just, like, I know AC is the same as CA, but put the letters in order. Another thing you could do is go over here and like perhaps match up the sides and angles. Like KP matches up with AY. KM, look at the letters, matches up with AC. And PM, again, look at the letters, matches up with YC. You can do the same thing with the angles if you'd like. Angle K is congruent to angle A, be careful there. Angle P is congruent to angle Y. And again, notice how I'm using different markings each time because I really have no way of knowing if maybe K and M are the same, A and C are the same, and I'm not really thinking that, so I just use different markings each time. And then lastly there with angle M, it's congruent to angle C. Not necessary, but you know, if that helps, maybe some people more with the visuals, you can see that. But really just here matching up the letters. CY, that's 3, 2. So on the first one, that would be MP. So again, perhaps try pausing it here and then trying the rest of these and then see what you get. PK matches up with YA. Angle Y, that would be angle P. Angle K is angle A. Now here you gotta be careful. ACY, that's 1, 3, 2. So on the other one, that would be 1, 3, 2. That would be 1. That would be 1, 3, 2. Now here we're saying triangles. And again, use proper notation every time, right? MPK, that's 3, 2, 1. So that would be 3, 2, 1. YAC, that's 2, 1, 3. So on the other one, it's 2, 1, 3. Again, just matching up those parts, matching up the letters. All right, so here on the back, it's applying that, and so it's going to be a lot of matching up of parts still. And so you're going to see me you know, sometimes just matching up parts, and sometimes I like to use just kind of a little system here in how I match things up. But really, anytime you match up parts, you set them equal. Okay, that's going to be a big thing, right? When you have corresponding parts, you know, you set them equal. So on this first one, it really has you just filling in a lot of information. So I just kind of start checking things off one by one, right? Like I say that, you know, I know WS, if I look at the order, matches up with NB. So, you know, I put another 9 here, right? 9 centimeters. Okay. And then I can just kind of keep running through and, you know, ST, look at the letters, that matches up with BF. And then here's another side I haven't matched yet. NF matches up with WT. So I could put that there. And so it's kind of just a way of sort of I match up the sides. And with the angles, really same thing, right? Like angle S here matches up with angle B. That would be 67 degrees there. N matches up with W, 82. Now, I don't know either T or F, but again, that's kind of where we have to think, well, how could I possibly find either of those? Really, if I know one, I know the other. Should be thinking subtract from 180, right? 180 minus 82 minus 67, you get 31 degrees. And so then that tells me here that not only, angle T, I get 31 degrees, also F. And so I can use that really to fill in all the information here, right, as necessary. So BN, what do we get there? 9, TW, 14. You could put centimeters as necessary. BF, that was 17. Angle W, 82 degrees. Angle B, 67 degrees. Angle F, 31 degrees. There you have it. 5 works very similarly. You sometimes just want to be careful, assuming what parts match up. You want to look at this very carefully. If you look at starting with say, GH here, again, look at the order of the letters. GH matches up with XY. And so, we can see the one on the left's isosceles, so is the one on the right. So really all these become 27. And I can fill in that feet as necessary. Then with the angles, I know that angle Y here matches up with angle H over here in this triangle. Okay. And then I know that for the remaining angles, I need to know a thing or two about isosceles triangles. We've talked about this a couple times in class. I know that a triangle that is isosceles has 2 congruent sides, which also means 2 congruent angles. We talked about how that congruent angle is always going to be opposite the congruent sides. And so what that means here is that we learn that angle G is congruent to angle J. And so same thing over here, that would be angle Z is congruent to angle X. So what that allows me to do is, if I think this through, how can I find those angles? I know one of them, and I know the other 2 are the same. Knowing the other same is really helpful. Because initially we've said, well, I can't just take 180 minus 38 and get everything I need. Well, that would give me the total of the other 2, which is 142. But then, again, that doesn't tell me one of the angles, it tells me the total of the other 2. So what do I got to do? I got to cut it in half, and then that tells me each one of them is 71 degrees. So then I'm allowed to say, okay, I know then that this is 71 degrees, so is this one, which means this one and this one. All 4 of them become 71 degrees. And then you can go ahead and fill in those missing measures as necessary. So on 6 and 7, what I'm going to do here, I'll go through a couple equations, a couple solving. I'm not going to practice too much of the algebra here. But one thing I do want to do is just really stress, really what we're going to be doing here with this algebra. Really not too much different from things we've been doing a lot already. But it's specifically how it relates to this section. We're going to match corresponding parts. Okay, and then we are going to set equal, and solve. All right? So, for example, we've practiced the idea of things that we know are equal. We set them equal, we solve. A lot of times we're plugging it back in. We don't really need to plug back in here too much, really at all. But, you'll notice here it says find the values of x, y, and z. Now, I would just start matching things up. Once you start matching things up, especially whenever you see this congruency statement, then you start to get the idea of what to set equal to what. And again, we got that number system that's going to help us match up these things. And so, we have three sides in each triangle that are labeled. Once you start matching up corresponding parts that are congruent, again, as I said, you know what to set equal. You set them equal, you solve for each variable. So for example, let's just start with x, right? You can start with x and find out what it matches, or you can start with the numbers, 50, 53, 57. I'm just going to guess that they're going to correspond to the other sides that have the variables, but however you want to do it. Let's just start here. Let's start with this 12x minus 7. What side does uv match up with? It matches up with ts. Okay, so I can set 12x minus 7 equal to 53 and solve. What next? All right, I know that 5y minus 33, that would be SR, corresponds to VW. So again, I would set 5y minus 33 equal to 57. And that leaves, it should match up, UW should match up with TR. Sure enough, it does. And so, again, I would set 3z plus 14 equal to 50. And again, solve. Similarly, on 7, using that numbering system there, I would set 36 angle P is congruent to angle C. We know that H is congruent to N, which leaves F and really S, which, again, we don't know. We don't know what to set F equal to. So I know, again, matching those up, 36 is equal to 4z minus 32. I know that 6x minus 29, we said was equal to what? 115. And that left 3y minus 1 equal to what? Again, unsure, right? So in order to figure out what to set this equal to so I can solve, again, I have to think, well, it's maybe what I would do initially anyways, but you kind of have to think to yourself, like I know what angle P is. Do I maybe know what angle H is? Or over on the other one, know what angle N is? Do I know what one of the other angles is? And so the way I would think about it is what might be helpful just from the beginning would say, okay, I know that if P is 36, we said that C was 36, right? And I know that if N is 115, H is 115 degrees, okay? So then what that helps me to do is then I can look at, each triangle, really the one or left or right, and say, all right, what's 180 minus 115 minus 36? And that would tell me the measure of the missing angle, which is 29 degrees. So I know now what to set 3y minus 1 equal to. Set equal to 29. And you can solve those for x, y, and z. Now, one like 8, really my thought process is, if it wants me to, I look at the information, it says triangle DEF is triangle JKL, lists a bunch of expressions for sides. Again, no aren't angles, we're not thinking 180. It says find the values of x and y. My thinking is, well, let's just find something with an x, like 9x minus 23, and see what it matches up with and see if that helps me at all. Well, what does DF match up with in the other triangle? Again, look at the order of the letters. DF would match up with JL. So let's match that up. DF would match up with JL. Okay, well that makes sense because I can set 9x minus 23 equal to 7x minus 11. Now I won't go through the process here. I will tell you x is 6, so practice that. Make sure you can get the same thing. Now try the same process for y. Look for something with a y, like 3y minus 21, which is jk, which matches up with DE. So I can set 3y minus 21 equal to 18. Again, I won't solve it, but I will tell you that y is 13. And so, again, practice that, refine those algebra skills, make sure you can get those. There you have it. Again, matching up corresponding parts. Last one here. You're going to find that the most common approach here, I think, is students will really just pick one of the numbers. They'll say, okay, if ultimately, I'm given that congruency statement here, given a couple of angles, but really I'm asked to find the measure of angle R. A lot of students will just maybe pick one of the angles there, or maybe subtract from 180, which we'll find ultimately is going to help us here. But one of the things that I would really recommend doing in a situation like this is drawing a picture, especially because it doesn't give me any information for angle R. Like it's not like number 8 where I can match up things and set things equal. And so the reason, again, I would draw a picture is it reveals a lot of information as you do it. So I draw 2 triangles here, and I'm going to label them really in corresponding order, right? Like QRS 1, 2, 3 is congruent to MNP 1, 2, 3. So the reason why I do that is as I start to fill in information, it starts to reveal what the measure of angle R is. So angle Q, I know the measure of angle Q is 27 degrees, which I know matches up with angle M, which is also 27 degrees. It says the measure of angle P is 126 degrees, right, which I know matches up with angle S, which is also 126 degrees, again, because using the order of the letters, right? So now I can see very clearly that both angle R and angle N are just simply what remains. So we should think to ourselves at this point, subtract from 180 and you get what's left over, which you find is 27 degrees. Now, I'm not concerned with that really being accurate. It's totally fine there, right? We get that's 27, which tells us here the measure of angle R is equal to 27 degrees. So as you can see here, it was really critical that we continued to match up corresponding parts, find things that were equal, set them equal, and solve. And really, everything that we did here really was based on that congruency statement. Something like this right here, okay? Told us the order of the letters, what matches up to what. It can help us draw pictures like here on number 9. Really, it sets the course for a lot of things that we're going to be doing here, again, for the rest of this unit. So, as always, hope this helps and reach out with any questions.